During this time today, women can own businesses, and it wasn't always like that. And even if they did own a business, it was always possible that a man owned it before them and it was passed down to them by their husband or whatnot. So, what do you do if you own a business, you're a woman that's alone, and you're doing a good job? People are going to come for you. And that's who we're going to be talking about today. It's Agnes Finnie. She was a shopkeeper and a moneylender, basically a bank. And she was very good at what she did because she was strictly business. We all have one of those friends that when they're super chill outside the office and all that fun stuff, but when it comes to the work, it's strictly business. It's like, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but this is my business type deal. And so it's kind of up for you guys to decide whether or not Agnes Finnie really did the things that she was accused of, or was this just a ploy to make her shop basically just go away? If you're new here, my name is Brandy, and what I do is I bring history back to life about witches, vampires, werewolves, poisoners. It doesn't matter. Anybody from the past that was persecuted in some type of way. And in this case, of course, Agnes, they're going to say that she's a witch. And while I do this, of course, I put makeup and stuff on my face. But like I say, today we're going to be talking about Agnes Finnie. And let's go ahead and get this party started. So Agnes Finnie was born in 1596 in Scotland. And yeah, we're doing another Scotland chick this week. And we don't know much about her before life, her childhood or anything like that. But we do know that she got married to a man named James Robertson in 1628. And they had one child together, and it was a baby girl, and her name was Margaret, okay? Now, Agnes did keep a solid, close relationship with her mom. She really did. Even after she moved out of the family home, she was still in contact with her mother all the time. She didn't want to break that connection. Agnes's husband eventually dies. We don't know from what. I don't know what led up to it, but he passes away. And she becomes a widow living in this place in Edinburgh called Potter Row. Now, what does she do? She's got this child. She has this daughter. I'm not sure how old her daughter is when the dad passes. So when he passes, she has a shop that she's selling things like out of her home. It could be like baked goods. It could be kind of remedies and things like that, because she was known to be called on to help people heal when they were sick, because not a lot of doctors went through this certain area for some reason, because evidently it just wasn't that popular of an area. It was inhabited by mostly poor people. And so having Agnes having this shop and her being able to lend money out and everything, everybody was kind of super jealous about that. And she was very, very, very strict when it came to her business. She was a no-nonsense type woman. She knew that her business was what kept food on the table. It's what kept a roof over their head. And so sometimes, of course, we've all come across a really bad customer before. Somebody that literally thinks that they are right just because they are the customer. And in actuality, that is so very wrong. Now, I don't want you guys thinking that Agnes is like rich, because she's not. But I'm telling you, because where they're living, it's not the best place for them to be living. But according to the others around her, she's doing better than most. And what happens when you're doing good in your life? What happens? People want to come and try and screw that up for you, because they don't like seeing people succeed. Some people don't. They take offense to that. They're like, oh my gosh, she's succeeding. I have to figure out some way to bring this down. And that's basically how these commoners felt towards Agnes. And like I say, her gnarly attitude really didn't help a whole lot either, because by the time people start talking about her and start saying that the words that she said to them were causing them illnesses, causing them to break limbs, causing them death, this, therefore, has now made her into what? A witch. Yes, they're now saying that she's a witch because she's good at her job. Yeah. So not only does she extend credit in her shop to people, you know, it's like, well, if you don't have enough money to buy today, you can go ahead and grab it and just, you know, I'll bill you or whatnot. She also had a guy living in a room in her house. She rented that room out to him, and he did odd jobs and stuff like that around the house for her, you know, in exchange for him, you know, living there and such. So she was, you know, to me, this makes her a smart woman. You know, she's alone. Her husband is no longer there. There's nobody else to provide except for her. Okay, so that's what she does. She starts to provide, and she has her shop. It's very successful, and most people are not successful during this time. And unfortunately, people started to look at her sideways, and like I say, charges eventually get brought. But before we jump into the rest, of course, I'm going to tell you guys a few things. First, let's talk about her temperament. Okay, like I've been saying, she does have a very sharp tongue, and she is not afraid to use it, especially if you owe her money. If you owe her money and you don't pay it back at a certain time, she gets incredibly angry. I'm not saying she goes around and she's like, you know, like a gangster or anything where she's like, you know, killing people if they don't pay her back. She just is very sharp with her words. And I think some of the things that would come out of her mouth, people were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe a woman would say something like that to a customer type deal. So she had a very, very sharp tongue, like I say. And another one of her problems is her and her neighbors were always going at it, like always arguing. There's always something going on between Agnes and her neighbors, whether it's they say, I'm going to tell you guys all the stories that these people came up with, okay, to charge her. All these things happened over a 16-year span, okay? When they actually bring charges to Agnes for witchcraft, they go around and they talk to all these people and get all these eyewitnesses, and they bring up 16 years of past crap to put against this woman, okay? So because she has a sharp tongue, and you know, she's like, she has an attitude when it comes to her clients, but only if they don't pay. If they don't pay on time, she lends you money and you don't pay it back, yeah, of course she's going to say something. It doesn't necessarily mean she's cursing you, and that's what we're going to get into. All these people were saying that she was cursing them, and she was calling on Satan to do these things, and she threatened them, and all of this other stuff. But yet you never see them take responsibility for what they did, maybe to get the receiving end of that. So to get into the curses that she supposedly laid on people, okay? So one night there was this kid who was the son of a Mr. William Farley, and he was, I guess, just strolling along, you know, and he saw Agnes, and he called out to her, Agnes Finnie, and which was a nickname that he would later on regret. She got really, really angry about this nickname. We don't really know why, but it is Agnes, and she is angry about a lot of things. And so she says a few things to this kid, you know, basically like cursing him. She cursed at him. And then within 24 hours, he had completely lost use of the left side of his body and became bedridden and had such an incurable disease that nobody knew what to do. And then later on, the physicians, they say that he died of supernatural causes, So that doesn't really help the situation here. And they don't really even know, you know what I mean, what happened. So they're like, oh my gosh, this is supernatural. We've never seen anything like this before. This is in the 1600s. There's a lot of shit you hadn't seen before. And so, anyway, they chalk it up to supernatural circumstances. And so this kind of starts getting people, the wheels turning in folks' head, like, okay, yeah, maybe she's a witch, you know, whatnot. So a week later, the boy dies, okay? And like I say, they think that something supernatural killed him, that it wasn't, you know, maybe just a stroke. This is what it sounds like it was. But he was one of Agnes's neighbors, and he was not the only one to end up suffering from things that she did. Another neighbor, her name was Beatrix Nesbitt, annoyed Agnes somehow and was giving a most fearful disease in which she lost the use of her tongue, unable to speak. They're saying that Agnes did this by using words. Yeah, okay. There was another story going around from a fisherman's wife named Janet, and she said that she had sold Agnes 2 herring fish. She was the wife of a fisherman, and Janet was like, I'm going to sell you these 2 fish. So upon eating the fish, Agnes said that they weren't fresh. No, this is not fresh, and I want my money back 100%. And so, of course, this causes problems because Janet's like, hey, you know, my husband's a fisherman, for God's sake. I just caught the fish. We just caught the fish. He just caught the fish, whatever. And so anyway, she didn't refund Agnes, and so Agnes screamed at her, quote unquote, never again eat another thing in this world. And then, believe it or not, Janet died that day, and it was definitely before she had another meal. So now it's you see where we're going with this. They're interviewing all these people, and all these people are dredging up things from the past. You know, people love to live in the past. You know, it's just a thing. But yeah, so and then the stories, they just keep rolling in. Then we got a story of Agnes going to a man named John Buchanan's house because they had a baby that was born with cerebral palsy. And Agnes was going to come over there and was going to help heal this baby. We all know that cerebral palsy is not, you know, it's not healable, but they did not know that back then. So, of course, they called on Agnes because she was still the person that people would talk and ask for when they needed something when it came to their health, because she had knowledge of those types of things, and she had a shop, and she had medicines, and, you know, all that other kind of stuff. Well, so she goes over there, and she goes into the child's room, and she asks the parents to leave the room, and, you know, go downstairs and pray for your child, you know, while I'm up here doing my thing and all this other fun stuff. So they're like, yeah, okay, you know, we're going to go down there, we're going to pray for our son, and we'll leave you up here and leave you to it. So, and when they returned, their son was even more ill, like so ill, he couldn't even move. This poor child couldn't even move his limbs or anything. And then when they picked him up to, you know, I guess cradle him because he was probably crying and things like that, they noticed a large portion of this baby's buttocks was like a chunk was gone, supposedly. Okay, a chunk of the family was gone. A chunk of the buttocks was gone, and of course the child died within a week. And these are what people are saying over a 16-year span. Okay, these people are going way back in time and thinking up stuff. I'm just telling you. But within this same family, the child's mom, her name was Bessie. So the child that just passed that had cerebral palsy, the mom, Bessie, and Agnes argued over money. Yeah, of course, don't you know? It's always got to be about money. So Agnes threatened to summon the devil to take a bite out of her, like her son, basically. And so she got freaked out, And Mr. Buchanan comes running in to Bessie's side and is like defending his wife and like calling Agnes a witch, threatened to throw her down a staircase if she didn't calm down because Agnes is wilding out by this time. And so Agnes just walked away. And so you're probably thinking, well, okay. She went a little bit buck wild, but she walked away from the fight. Did she? So it happens later on that night. Mr. Buchanan becomes sick. Yes, he does. Like right after Agnes leaves, he becomes ill with a fever, but he woke up the next day and he felt stronger. So he's like, maybe her magic didn't work on me, So he kind of gets brave. Yeah, he does. He heads over to Agnes's house. He's going to confront her. He's thinking she's put something crazy on me, right? So he's well enough to go over to her house and confront her and be like, hey, look, see, I'm still here. Yeah, I got a fever. That was it, and I feel a whole lot better now. So your magic didn't work type deal. And so, but he still goes over there and he's like, so whatever curse you tried to put on me, you might as well go ahead and lift it because it's not doing its job type deal. And so he went to her and told her that, and immediately he felt better, but that wouldn't last long, unfortunately. Later, Buchanan would argue with Agnes after refusing to give his wife a cake on credit. Okay. I'm telling you, these people and their cakes and the credit and all this other stuff is just absolutely insane. So after they demand this cake, Agnes is like, no, get out of my house, point blank period. You don't need to be here type deal. And said that his birth had clearly been caused by a witch and his death would be caused by one too. So not only did she say something about his mama, she also threatened him. Okay. And this guy is, once you recovered the first time, I think you just leave it alone, That'd be a smart move. But no, he didn't leave it alone. So Buchanan went home. Just told him to leave, he left. And immediately he became sick again. He contracted a long and grievous sickness whereof he was like to melt away in sweat, like in sweat. He was sweating a lot. And soon he ended up passing away. So I told you guys that Agnes lent money, of course. Not only did she have a shop, she also lent money out to people that needed it. And one of her people that she lent money to was Isabel Atchison. And Isabel was ready to go and settle her bill with Agnes. She was like, hey, I'm here. How much do I owe you? Yeah. And so Agnes and her get in an argument about how much is owed, of course. Agnes said that she would summon the devil to bring havoc over this woman's family because of the disagreement over the amount that's owed or whatnot. So the next day, Isabel fell from a horse and she broke her leg. And so you got to keep in mind, guys, that these are very, very poor people and they are nitpicking things in the past to put forth and make it present, basically, so that they can put charges on this woman. Just keep that in mind, okay? Agnes was so pleased that she felt like punishing the daughter too of this poor woman of Isabel. And so the daughter's name was Euphane Kincaid. She made the mistake of arguing with Agnes and calling her a witch. Agnes said if this was true, the family better watch out. Yeah. And a few days later, the daughter was playing right next to Agnes's house when this huge wooden beam fell and crushed her leg, making it useless forever. And so now all these people are saying that, yeah, she's the one that's doing all this. She's the one that she's putting curses on people in town and all these horrible things are happening to them. So it has to be Agnes, right? Then after that, Margaret Williamson suffered an attack by Agnes after an argument. She got ill and she ended up losing her vision, okay, through all this. So we have all these people that are coming up and thinking They're like, oh, do you think Agnes is, a witch? And they're thinking of things that they associate with the witch, which is her screaming about the devil and cursing at them and saying crazy stuff, even though maybe she's just trying to actually run her business right. And she wasn't going to get nobody was going to railroad her, point blank period. It was strictly business. Agnes wasn't all about just defending herself either. She defended her family too, like you wouldn't believe. She had a brother-in-law that got a brother-in-law or a son-in-law that had gotten some kind of citation from this prestigious shoemaker saying that this young man had called a riotous behavior or whatnot. So this pissed off Agnes pretty bad. She was outraged. She went down to the shoe store and she hit Robert, the shoemaker, over the head with her hat, saying that his business would start to fail. Okay, she just goes down there. She has of it, and then she is just releasing the beast on this guy. She's like, your family is gonna have all these terrible things happen to them, and your business is going to fail, and all this other stuff. And immediately, his business starts to fail miserably, until Agnes said to him, you need to apologize to me. If you apologize, I can make this all go away. So the things she's kind of saying make her do sound like a witch. But I think she knew so many people in the town that as a well-established shop owner herself, she could deter people from going to his shop. She could just say, yeah, I tried to get one of my shoes fixed, and as soon as I put it on, I fell to the floor. The shoe broke. It was just crap. He's not a good shoemaker. I don't know why anybody would go see this guy. Now, that's how I could see this going down. And I can see him being mad about that because this is a woman doing it to him. Which is not okay. It wouldn't be okay for a man, and it's super not okay for a woman. So he apologizes. He apologizes to her son-in-law, says, I am so very sorry. And she lifts the curse, supposedly, according to the shop owner. And their business immediately starts to get better. Okay, could it be coincidence? I don't know. This is for you to decide. I'm just telling you what I found. Now, another person named Christian Harlow had ordered some salt, large things of salt from her store, but sent it back and said, it's too expensive. I don't want it. So he buys all these huge things of salt. And so Agnes wasn't there. So he actually got his money back. She wasn't at the store that day. So when he came in, the clerk behind the counter was like, okay, if you don't want the salt, I'll give you your money back. Not a problem. No. This was a huge problem for Agnes. Because Agnes didn't do refunds. Point blank period. No. She did not do refunds. Even though she would expect people to refund her, she would not do refunds. No. Christian then fell ill. The family paid Agnes a sum to come and lift the sickness. She comes over. She does that. And then he got better. Okay. Yeah. Then we have a foolish woman named Mrs. Simpson. Asked for a little bit longer. Asked for an extension, if you will, on her loan that she has with Agnes. And it was already an overdue account. So you can imagine Agnes is probably already on pins and needles with this woman, okay? And so she's like, you know what? I'm going to be generous and give you 8 more days to pay it, is what Agnes tells Miss Simpson. You have 8 more days. Cool. She said, if you do not have this money in 8 days, something terrible is going to happen to somebody in your family. As point blank period, what she said. I don't think that's a curse. I think that's just a straight up threat. But she is speaking it into the universe. So, you have to kind of keep that in mind too. 8 days goes by. There is no payment. The debt was not paid. And guess who died on the 8th day, and no, it wasn't Miss Simpson, it was Mr. Simpson. Her husband passed on the day she was supposed to pay it back, and she didn't. So there's quite a few more, of course. And we have a person named John Robeson. He got a fever for calling Agnes a witch. A man named John Cockburn was scared by the appearance of Agnes in his bedroom one night. Yeah, he said he saw her in his house, and like she was like sneaking around or something or whatnot. And the reason for the visit supposedly was because she had a disagreement with his daughter. Okay. And all the doors and windows and everything were closed. They couldn't figure out how she got in, but they knew that she had come in, and it was probably because of this disagreement with the daughter. Now, a man named William Smith was ruined and couldn't get his things back from Agnes after he pawned them, which means like he basically probably pawned everything that he possibly had, and then went to go get it back, and she had already sold it, and it just completely ruined this man, because during this time it was about your things and what you have, and you know, it's about the necessities of life, but most people were wanting pretty dresses, nice furniture, you know, things like that they really couldn't have in that area of Scotland at the time. They weren't even involved that much in the war, although it did fluctuate their food and stuff like that. And so that's why a lot of these people that told all these stories were kind of put on the spot about maybe Agnes is the reason. Maybe she's the reason why all this is happening, and we need to put a stop to it, you know. We just don't know what their thinking was. But to go back through 16 years of, I had a disagreement with her, and we had a fight, and then I broke my leg after I fell off a horse, and it's her fault. It's like, really? Because that kind of stuff happens every day. So after 28 years, the town is like, okay, we're done. Enough is enough with Agnes. We are done with her, and we need to go and talk to the priest or whatever. And so they go, and they talk to the priest and the police, and they start getting the ball rolling on getting a warrant for her arrest. So we have two people that are in on this warrant, and their names are Harry Morrison, who is just a Potter Row resident, and then he met up with the minister of the Greyfriars Kirk to declare Agnes a witch, because the only reason why they did this was because she was prosperous, A, she had a shop, B, and she was mean. People didn't like the fact that she was successful, that she was mean, and she was running a business. Point blank, period. She was arrested by the police on June of 1644, and her house was completely ripped to shreds, looking for any and all evidence of witchcraft, of which they found none. Nothing. No pictures of the devil, no altars, no candles made of, you know, creepy wax, nothing. They found nothing that would suggest that Agnes Finnie was ever a witch. Now, she was jailed at the Edinburgh Tolbooth place. That's, I guess, what they would call the police station. And they booked her in there. The conditions are like pretty much all the other videos I've ever made, telling you guys about it. The conditions were pretty bad. You know, they rarely gave their prisoners food. You know, they rarely did things like that. The only time that Agnes got any food was when her daughter brought her some food, and on the rarity that they would let her daughter even see her. Okay, and the weird thing about this is they keep Agnes in jail for months, doing nothing. Yes, they did go and interview like the entire town and gather all those stories I just told y'all to bring as evidence against her. But other than that, they have nothing else. They just have this 16 years of things going back, you know, to say that she's a mean person and that she's a witch because she said she cursed somebody with the devil or whatnot. And so they kept her in jail from June of 1644 until November 6th of that year. And it wasn't until she actually brought it to their attention, was like, hey, I'm still here. Like, are we gonna have a court date? Are we gonna have a court session? Like, what is the deal here? So she's angry at this point. She complained. She was like, her prosecutors would neither try her nor liberate her, so that she's just likely to die, is what she said. She's like, they're just gonna leave me in here to die. Nobody's gonna convict me of anything. They're just gonna leave me here and I'm just gonna die. Point blank period. So then, like I say, the minister started speaking to witnesses. They got all the stories and they made an indictment for her. And nothing else happened until she complained in November. So the council told the courts, you guys got 2 weeks to start court proceedings on this woman, or you guys are going to be in trouble. So the trial date was set for November 11th. But our girl Agnes has got her some representation. Because, most of the time in these court cases, these women don't have any kind of representation because they can't afford it. But she could. Yes, she absolutely could. And her lawyers were pissed that they didn't even get to see or speak to their client before anything happened, before November 11th. So then it got postponed again so that they could have time to speak with Agnes, get her side of the story, come up with a defense, and then present it to the prosecution. And so court then reconvened on December 18th of that year, and at that time she was 48 years old. So we have the advocates of John Nesbitt and John Lottie to defend her. And for the prosecution, we have Sir Thomas Hope of Craig Hill, assisted by a man named John Oliphant. They laid 20 charges against Agnes, okay? A lot of them involving her shop activities and her money lending, okay? Now, some were petty grievances. Most were petty grievances from 16 years before. Accusations made by what she says a motley crew collection of irate husbands, a deacon of one of the crafts, fond of drink, and with an unhappy married life, a drunkard, and a poor drunken wobster. This is what she's calling these people that are bringing up all this stuff from her past. She's just like, you guys are just crap, basically. This is malarkey. You know what I mean? So, like I say, some of the neighbors, they got up there and they talked about the things that she did to them, and they were not happy about it whatsoever, no. And they talked about all the charges, all that fun stuff. She allegedly cursed 6 people that took sick afterwards. Like I say, she had the dispute over a fish, and then somebody broke their leg in a fall, and then, all these claims were put against her. So, the final allegation, the 20th allegation, is the worst of them all. It's a general charge that she fraternized with the devil to put illnesses on people and all this other stuff. That's what they're saying. Even though they never had any true witnesses of her meeting with, say, a devil of some sort, big red guy, horns, whatever. Then nobody ever really saw her doing that. So she declares at Edinburgh Kirk session that she had been commonly call it a rank witch. Their 25 years began or thereby. Basically saying, they've been calling me a witch my entire life. How is this any different, what they're doing? How is this different, what they're doing right now, if they've always been calling me a witch? So she's like, it doesn't bother her, She's like, okay, you call me a witch, that's fine. You still owe me money. Or that cake is still 6 pence. Or, she still had a business to run, is what I'm trying to say. And so, but unfortunately, when she said this, the prosecution twisted it to make it sound like she was confessing to being a witch. Even though what she was saying is they all thought I was witches all the time anyway. So what am I going to say to change their mind now? And so to the prosecution, that's a confession. That's her saying that she was a witch. Even though they have no evidence, there's no altar, there's no candles, there's no picture of the devil, there's nothing in her home that indicates that she actually worships the devil or anything like that. But because she was a successful shop owner and lender of money, people were jealous of that. So they used any and all excuses they could possibly use to shut her down. Most of the time in these trials, these witches, they start naming each other, right? They start pointing fingers. Well, no other witches came forward and claimed Agnes. None. None were like, oh yeah, she's in my coven, and we flew, and we put curses on children. And, nobody came forward and said that. So prosecutors argued that because nobody had seen her with this devil, supposedly, then it established how guileful a witch she was, as her meetings were undetected. Basically saying, if she really was a witch, how did she get by with it all this time under everybody's radar? Even though she has a shop in her home where people come in all the time. And so you have to think of it like that. It's not that she was actually doing it and the meetings are going undetected. She wasn't doing it at all. Point blank, period. So the prosecution is basically saying, just because we didn't see her do it doesn't mean that she didn't do it. Okay, but yet there's no evidence, there's no record or anything like that. And so of course we get to jury day, and the jury was made up of the residents and neighbors of Potter Row, where she lives. All the people that are in the jury, she's probably sold them something or helped them in some way, shape, or form, and they are there to pass judgment on her. Okay? And basically, the jury just did not like her demeanor. They just didn't like her as a person, point blank, period. Okay, well, if you don't like her as a person, don't be around her. Don't buy from her if you don't want to. But she is a very strict business lady. Okay, she had a daughter to take care of until her daughter got married, obviously. But unfortunately, the jury came back with a verdict on February 8th of 1645. It took them a while. It really did. I don't know what they were thinking. But Agnes was guilty of being in continual society and company of the devil. And she was sentenced to die. And like I said in the last video, what they do in Scotland is they carry that sentence out maybe a day after you receive that sentence. It's really quick. They're like, you're sentenced to death, the next day is your execution. And so that didn't happen with her for some reason. No. Agnes wasn't taken to Castle Hill to be strangled and her body burned until March 6th, which was 4 weeks after her conviction. So everything about this screams to me, I want your store and I want your money, and we're going to kill you so that we can get it. Basically, that's what I'm gathering from this whole entire story. She was a successful woman. She didn't take anybody's shit, and she took care of her family. That was her role. That's what she did. And if anybody tried to stray her from that path, she would set them straight. Yeah, maybe it was rude, but that's just how Agnes was, But they did take her to Castle Hill on March 6th, where she was then strangled and burned, and that was the end of Agnes. Now there is a plaque in Edinburgh it's called the Witch's Well, and it's on the Royal Mile. It's where they dismissed most of the witches that got killed in Edinburgh, which is 300 at the time. And unfortunately, Agnes was not on that list. No. She, as of, I think I read February 2025, she hasn't been pardoned. Then I saw that she had been in March of 2025 for injustice on behalf of the Scottish Parliament of the accused in the 16th and 18th century. And so we had a couple of people say, issue apologies and say how bad that witches and stuff were. They never had anybody actually come out and like name them and be like, yeah, these people are pardoned, until March of 2025. So after Agnes's death, she is one of 13 witches that were featured in an art exhibition called Witches in Word, Not Deed by Carolyn Sutton. It was held at the Edinburgh Central Library in Towards Scotland in 2023. Edinburgh City actually has ghost walks where it's rumored that if you see Agnes's spirit, if you leave a coin or two at her feet, she will not haunt you. She'll leave you alone type deal, which I think is so cool. But this woman was ahead of her time. This is during a time when most women did not own businesses, point blank, period. No. And when her husband passed away, she took it over like a champ, just like anybody now would. If their husband passed away, they would take over the head of the family. And that's what she did. And maybe she was a little bit rough around the edges about that, but especially when it comes to the lady that was lent money and she was already owing Agnes. It was already a late bill, and then she asked for another extension. And does she really think she's not going to get some kind of verbiage back from her saying, this is not right, I'm going to allow this to happen, but this is not cool, you can't do this again? And then arguing over the price of her cake that she made, that's the price. You can't, she was just trying to take care of her family. She only had the daughter, and the daughter did eventually get married, but a woman being successful in business was something that really drove people crazy back then. It made them nuts, especially men. Men couldn't handle it. No. Women were not supposed to own businesses. They weren't supposed to bother their fragile little minds with things like that. But Agnes knew that she had a family to take care of, and there was nothing that was going to stop her from doing that, point blank, period. And so she ran her shop, and she ran her money lending, and unfortunately, because of poverty and being hungry and circumstance, they saw her as being above them, and they did not like it, which is unfortunate because that still happens today. You can be the most successful person in the world, and there will always be somebody right there ready to tell you how much you suck whenever you're ready to listen. Don't ever be ready to listen. Take it from Agnes. She was kind. She was. She would help people when they were sick, and she loved children. She really loved children a lot, and she helped a lot of children get well. But the family with the kid with cerebral palsy, maybe they didn't know that it wasn't uncurable back then, but I don't understand. I feel like that whole chunk of the baby was missing, because why wouldn't the cops have been called then? If I found a chunk of my kid missing after being alone in a room with a woman, I'd be calling the police. Or I would be digging up the body to see if this actually happened, But unfortunately, back during these days, they went by hearsay. They went by what the townspeople said. And if the townspeople said that she sucks, then everybody's going to say she sucks. And unfortunately, back then, she didn't have a way to fight it. Even though she had really good lawyers, she had a good defense, there was no going up against her peers, because they were the ones that condemned her to begin with. So to me, it's an unfair trial, because half the stories came from the people within the town, And then you have half the town as her the jury. I don't know. It's bad press for her, and it's unfortunate. But she did get that excuse. I believe I read it was March of 2025 this year, finally, that Agnes Finnie got her pardon in Scotland, and she is no longer considered a witch. Obviously, she did not do any witchy things. She did not bow down to the devil or anything like that. She actually helped people, and if you think about it, lending money to somebody is helping them, but that person also wants their money back. You know, it's a business thing. It's not a hurt your feelings thing. It's a business thing. And that's the way she thought about it. And that's the way a lot of men thought about it, and they couldn't wrap their head around that. How can a woman think that way? So anyways, that is our story for today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and get ready for October, because yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun videos for that one. So much love, you guys.